Hey everyone and welcome back. If you have followed along with our last video, you saw how we built a CI/CD pipeline with GitHub Actions. It was fast, automated, but that final deployment step was a simulation. Today we are taking our automation to the next level by building a full end-to-end pipeline that takes our code from GitHub to AWS and deploy it in a live AWS EKS cluster. This is the video where it all comes together. So how are we going to do this? We have three main steps. First, we need a Kubernetes cluster to deploy to. And then to make things easy, we will use eksctl, that is command line in AWS CloudShell, which handles all the complex parts for us. Second, we need to create a secure connections between GitHub and AWS account. And finally, we will go back to our GitHub Actions and our workflow and update the file we created in our last video to perform the real deployment. Before we connect our pipeline, we need a secure way to GitHub for GitHub to talk to AWS account. We will use GitHub securely store our credentials, including our Docker Hub username and password, as well as our AWS access key ID and secret access key. This method is simpler and more direct for this demo, keeping all sensitive information encrypted and out of our code. This is the updated ci.yaml file. We have several ways, new steps. We have added these several new steps in our workflow. We have now steps to install dependencies, build and push our Docker image to Docker Hub using our secrets, and then configure AWS credentials. The final crucial step is deploy to EKS, which uses kubectl command to apply or deploy to deploy the application's YAML files directly into the EKS cluster. All right, enough theory. The best way to learn this is to do it. I will switch to my GitHub repository and we will update our CI YAML file with the new steps. We will commit and push the changes and then we will see our pipeline run for the very first time. Alright everyone, welcome back. As you can see, I've got our GitHub repository ready. It has our simple application code and basic ci.yaml file from our last video. Today we are going to take this a step further. We'll set up our cloud infrastructure and then replace that simulated deployment step with a real deployment to an EKS cluster, all from the browser. At the end, we will make sure we clean up all the resources we have created so you don't incur any charges. Unexpected costs, basically. So the very first step in our cloud journey is to get our Kubernetes cluster ready. We will do this using eksctl in CloudShell. First, we need to ensure the necessary tools are installed. So let's open the AWS console. I have it ready and logged in. I will open a CloudShell here, CloudShell environment in a new browser tab. I will click on this to open it in a new browser tab. I will close this one. Okay, so the CloudShell environment is ready. So first let's install kubectl. The kubectl is basically a Kubernetes command line tool, and in eksctl, it is the tool we will use to create a cluster. So let's run these commands in CloudShell. I have those commands ready. I will first install the kubectl. So it's installing the kubectl. It won't take longer. Once this is done, we need to update the permission so that it can run the kubectl appropriately. Perfect. Let's create a set the path for kubectl so that it can run perfectly fine. Let's see. Perfect. So the kubectl is working fine. Let's now install this eksctl. We'll press enter. I have set up. Perfect. So the setup is now downloaded. Just set the path for eksctl as well so that it is also running. Great. So the tools are now installed. We can now create our EKS cluster with the simple eksctl command. I have that command ready. I will paste it here. Okay. So the region I need to specify, for me it's AP South 1 because it is the closest to my location. I will just paste this location and also the cluster name. I can give it anything. For our demo, I will give it my first cluster. Perfect. So this command will take about 15 minutes to provision the cluster. So we will fast forward through this part. Once it's done, you will see a success message after this, and you will see that your EKS cluster is now ready. So let's wait for this EKS cluster to get ready. So cluster is now ready. Actually, my CloudShell was terminated due to inactivity, but there is a stack, so there is kind of a CloudFormation stack in AWS where it manages this cluster. So you don't have to worry about it. It just you can go into the CloudFormation service, and then you will see two stacks created as part of that command, and the status should be create complete. So once those are create complete, you can check into the going to the service of EKS, and you will be able to see your cluster should be ready by then. As you can see, my first cluster is now ready. So next, we need a place to store our Docker image that will be created by our workflow. So let's head over to hub.docker.com. It is basically a registry for public Docker images. You can create an account if you don't have one, and sign up for it, because we would need Docker username and password for publishing our image. So I have already created an account. It's free, and you can get it created. Once you have this ready, just copy username and password. We will need that in later stage. So now we need AWS credentials to deploy to EKS. So let's go to the AWS console and open IAM service. We'll go to console and search for IAM. It is identity and access management. So go to users and click on add user, create user. I will name this user GitHub Actions user because we need it for GitHub Actions. And then I'll click on next. For permissions, I will click on attach directly, and then for now, for this demo, I will provide administrative access. This is basically provide everything, but this is not a good practice. You should only provide the permissions that are required. But for this demo purpose, I'm selecting that. I will click on next, and then I will click on create user. Perfect. Once the user is created, I will generate the access key ID and secret access key. These are basically keys for communication between AWS and GitHub. So go to this user and then click on security credentials tab. Scroll down and click on create access keys. We will select third party service because the GitHub is a third party, and click on confirmation, and then click on next. For description, I will say GitHub Actions and click on create access keys. Okay, so the access keys are now created. This is very crucial. Just copy these access key and secret access key in a safe place, because we will need them, and this won't be available after this screen. So make sure you copy them, and then save it somewhere, and click on done after you have copy pasted them somewhere. As it is said, you haven't viewed or downloaded your secret key, because I haven't clicked on show. That's why it is just giving me a confirmation box, and I will click on continue. Perfect. So our user is created and we have copied the credentials. Now let's go back to GitHub and add these credentials as secret. I will go to the GitHub and in my repository that has this code already from our previous video. I will go to settings of this repository. I will scroll down and then click on secrets and variables, and then actions. Scroll down a bit and then click on add new repository secret. So we would need to add 4 secrets: Docker username and password, and then access key ID and secret access key that we just copied. So we have added these 4 secrets: AWS keys and then Docker username password. So now we will update our GitHub Actions workflow. Go to the code and then click on GitHub workflow. Click on ci.yaml. We will update this file. Click on this pencil file. As of now, you can see the code. This is all simulated. There is no live code that is happening. Everything is simulated deployment. So we will replace this with the actual workflow that we have. So I have this ready. I will just copy and paste it here. So what it is doing now is basically it is checking out the code, then installing the dependencies, then running automated. We don't have, this is a sample application, so that's why we don't have any tests right now. Just I'm just echoing this step, and then building Docker image. This is Docker build, and then it is pushing this. This is basically pushing it to the um, building the Docker image and then pushing it to the Docker Hub. Then we are configuring the AWS credentials and then updating the kube config. Basically, this is required for the kubectl that we have uh, to to be able to deploy our application to AWS. So I will just commit these changes and I will updating workflow and I will commit it. So as soon as we will commit this file, workflow will be triggered. Let's go back to actions and then click on updating workflow that we have committed just now. Click on build and deploy. So you will see each step executing from building the Docker image to deploying it to EKS. It's now pushing the Docker image to Docker Hub and then configuring AWS credentials right now. Now updating the kube config. Okay. So this error that we are seeing, basically it couldn't found the EKS cluster. Let's quickly check our ci.yaml file again. I will open the code and go back to ci.yaml file. I will click on edit this file and scroll down a bit. So as you can see, the configure AWS credentials has AWS region US West 2, but our AWS region is AP South 1. So let's update this region for configuring AWS credentials. Also, if we see this deploy to EKS and update kube config, both has so this update kube config has region US West 2. Let's update this, and the cluster name is also looks incorrect. Let's quickly verify that. I will go to EKS service, open the EKS dashboard. So the cluster name is my first cluster. Let's copy this name and then I will go to edit and then I'll replace this with my EKS cluster. Perfect. So this should be enough now. Let's quickly commit the changes. Updated region and cluster name. Always make sure that commit message is related to what you did. So go back to actions and then click on update region. Click on build and deploy. Okay, it is running now. Let's quickly check whether this is successfully running or not. It is building Docker image. So once it's already done, it would be quite fast because the real layer already exists. All most of the things it has already done, so it will be faster than previous one. Okay, so now it is deploying to EKS. Let's see. Okay, so it got failed. So it says that the server has asked for the client to provide credentials. It means that there's some issue with the authentication. So I think we would need to update our kubeconfig map. So there's some permissions that are required for our user, that is the GitHub user that we have created. It should be able to perform. So what we need to do is we need to go to our CloudShell. For that we need to update the permissions. So go back to your CloudShell and we will need a special file called config map. It is in Kubernetes. So for that we need to run this command kubectl. So first let's see whether our kubectl is able to access the cluster. Let's see the, okay, it is not able to access that. So what we need to do is we need to configure kubectl first for our kubectl to connect to the cluster. Let's copy this command and run in CloudShell. Perfect. Let's run the kubectl get nodes again. Great. So it can list down the nodes that are there in our cluster. So it means that kubectl is now connected. So the command that we need to run to update the config map for the permissions is this. Let me paste it. Kubectl edit config map AWS auth, and then kubesystem. Okay, so here you can see there is map roles. What we need to do is we need to add uh, add our user that we had created here. Okay, I have added the users map user sections here. Let's save this file and close it. Perfect. So the config map AWS auth has been edited. Let's quickly run this workflow again. I will scroll to the bottom, or I will just refresh this one. So we'll open the last run and click on this build and deploy. I will just refresh this to rerun this job. I will click on rerun jobs. Okay, so it's now running. Let's click on build and deploy, and then it is starting right now. Building the Docker image. Configuring AWS credentials, updating the kube config, deploying to EKS. Great. So as you can see, this deployment is now created. Service is also now created. To verify, we will go to the cluster and open the EKS cluster and go to the resources. I will open the pods section, and there you can see my node app deployment is just a few seconds ago. So this deployment is perfectly done. So once the workflow completes, you will see this green button, the green sign, and you should see your pods running as well in the cluster that we have saw. And great. So that's it. You have just deployed a Node.js application to AWS EKS using GitHub Actions. So to recap, we have gone from manually running a few commands to building a fully automated end-to-end deployment pipeline that takes our code from GitHub and puts it in our live server. But we still had to run a manual command to create our EKS cluster. The next logical step is to automate that as well using Terraform. This Terraform is a powerful tool for infrastructure as a code. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.